Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to let folks trickle in from the waiting room. We'll get started in just a minute. But in the meantime, make yourselves comfortable and we'll be getting started very soon. In the meantime, I'm going to just keep chatting so you know you're in the right place. And we will kick off in just about 30 seconds while folks trickle in from the waiting room. Very excited to have you all here. I'm seeing folks popping in. And once I see that slow down, I will get us started. So just to preempt any questions while we're filling the air, we are recording this session and you will be able to access it on Handshake's YouTube channel and blog shortly after we wrap today. And for those who maybe have to drop or have to run to class, we will be emailing that recording out for anybody who registered for the event. So do not worry. Feel free to take notes, but you'll be able to access this later on. So with that, I'm seeing 1 minute after the hour, and I will go ahead and get us started. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brinton Botkin. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead student marketing here at Handshake. I'm really, really excited to welcome everybody today. A couple of quick notes of housekeeping before we get started. We're going to have about 20 minutes of prepared discussion with our fabulous panelists today, and we'll save about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A from you, the audience. So please submit your questions over the course of the session. We'll try to get to as many as we can before we wrap. As a reminder, you won't be able to see the questions that other people are submitting until we mark them as answered. So please don't think we are ignoring you. I promise we're not. We're just going to try to get to as many as we can before we wrap. With that said, I'm super, super excited to have our fabulous panelists today. We know that fall recruitment is underway and it can feel really daunting to see all of the different openings that you're maybe coming across on Handshake or other job search platforms across tons of different industries. And this event is part of a new Cool Job Spotlight series that we've kicked off this fall to show folks firsthand some of the different positions and career paths that are available to them and the ways that you can craft your career to suit your interests, your skills, and your passions. So today's panelist is the Senior Manager of Communications and Social over at Attentive. And with that, Todd, can you introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about you and maybe projects that you're working on right now?
Absolutely. Thanks, Britton. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Todd. As Britton said, I lead social at Attentive, which, if you're unfamiliar, I'm not surprised. We are a B2B platform, so we work with brands to provide SMS, so texting and email, so that they can reach you with discounts, sales, product drops. So anytime you get a text from a brand, it's very likely that it's come from Attentive. So my role is to lead organic social. So I run all of our organic social platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, probably Threads. I'm probably forgetting one. And every day there's a new one.
Yeah, you'll have many, many more to touch, I'm sure.
Pinterest, I'm hoping to join.
Oh, exciting.
Yes, more on that later if anyone has questions. But my day-to-day involves a lot of social strategy. So building out how we talk to our followers and our community, how we build that community on social, and then also helping teams within Attentive get their work and their message out onto our organic channels. So it's not just posting memes every day, but it's also talking to folks about our new product updates, new features, getting them prepped for Black Friday, for instance, which is a project that I'm working on right now. And I also work cross-functionally with a lot of folks on our brand team to help bring our brand campaigns to life. So our creative campaigns.
Okay, very fun. And as somebody who is, up to your eyeballs in social, you're very aware of day in the life as a concept and as a format. Is there an average day in the life for you in social and comms?
One of the best things about what I do is that every day, and this is not the case for everybody, and I totally respect if it's not your thing, but for me, waking up and kind of having variety in my day is one of my favorite parts of my job. So I know on a surface level, every day I'm gonna log in and I'm gonna have uh, kind of a process of figuring out what's trending that day, what's going on, what are the big messages that we have to get out. But a lot of that is pre-planned. It's not just logging in every day and deciding what to post morning up. There's a lot of planning involved.
Mhm.
A lot of my day as a senior manager also involves meeting with folks across the company just to see what they're up to and how I can support them.
Yeah.
So at this stage of my career, it's a little more meetings than there used to be. But in terms of what you folks might be doing as an in early career in social, it might look a little bit different. You
Mhm.
might spend a little bit more time in Figma or Photoshop or Canva creating assets. You might write copy and review it with a copywriter. You might honestly spend an hour on TikTok for work. Every day can look different.
I love that. Amazing. I would love to dig in. You mentioned kind of early career. I would love to maybe turn back the clock and think through your early career. Can you talk a little bit more about your path, maybe what inspired you to craft your career in social media and how what you're doing today aligns with, or maybe doesn't align with, what you thought you would be doing when you got started in your career?
I think craft is a great word to use. Along with a lot of folks that I talk to that do what I do, did not start my career in social. When I graduated 10 years ago, I don't think that a full-time career in social was something that a lot of folks were actively pursuing. So my first job was actually in tech sales. I packed 2 suitcases and I got on a plane to San Francisco. And I started working at a large tech company that still exists today, but it has a little bit of a different function. I won't name drop, but I was smiling and dialing, as they called it. So I was logging in every day and putting on my headset and making 85 cold calls a day. So I did that for about a year, and I'm a very outgoing person, but making that volume of cold calls was not necessarily for me. However, I think that it was a great way for me to realize that I loved working with uh, what I would later come to find we call merchants at a later job. So just folks who are building their businesses and working with them to help them tell their stories. And that's been a through line in my career. So after I left sales, I actually went into media. So I was a media buyer in New York. And what that means is that whenever you would log into a website to read the news or I don't know, onto Reddit or even Pinterest, and you saw an ad for a company, I was potentially the one on the other end of the line putting those ads there. And that's how I segued my way into social.
I love it. And I think one of the things that I've seen to be true for a lot of folks who are super successful on the social side, I've dabbled, but I would not consider myself a pro like you, is there is no college major in social media.
Yeah,
So there is kind of this like less linear path, I feel like, when it comes to building a career in this space and crafting that. Did you major?
absolutely.
Sorry if you touched on it, but did you?
I did not touch on my major in college. So I actually I went to a university that did not have a journalism degree. I often find that journalism is a great basis for communications and social. Not a
Mhm.
lot of universities offer it as a degree. I majored in organizational studies,
Okay.
otherwise known as HR. So I do think, and this might come into play later, I do think having those people skills and learning how to navigate organizations and teams and being a bit of a camp counselor is really important in social. There's no
Yeah.
one size fits all skill set when it comes to social, but that for me has been really helpful.
Mhm.
While I didn't study communications or journalism, I did work at the school's newspaper for all 4 years of college, and that was a part-time job that they cut me a check. I was getting paid to work at the newspaper, so it felt like a real thing. So I joined the newspaper staff in the second week, and a lot of people said that that was kind of their way of working in journalism,
Yeah.
studying journalism. I think getting that real hands-on experience was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm gonna predict some questions that I imagine you'll get that we can save for the Q&A. But a lot of the folks in the audience here, one of their big concerns is that they haven't necessarily had directly applicable professional experience yet. And so they're thinking about how do you demonstrate your skills? How do you build the skills that will be relevant in a career in comms and social media or just generally as a professional? So I'll plant that seed. Maybe we can circle back to it in the Q&A. And remember, folks, you can use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you have any questions for Todd
Please
as
do.
we're going through. We'll save some time at the end there. But Todd, I'd like to circle back to maybe some of the less linear elements of your career path. There are always learning curves and adjustment periods when you're kind of moving into a new space. And it sounds like, you started in with an HR degree and then you moved into tech sales and then you kind of navigated your way from media and into social and comms. Did you face any like standout challenges as you entered your career or specifically into the role that you're in today? And how did you think about overcoming those as they came up?
Yeah, I mean, I think one big element of working in social is that every single day can look vastly different than the one before. You know, platforms change every day, the way folks communicate changes every day. And so I think having to learn to be a little bit nimble was really important, having to learn a growth mindset. Some of you may have heard about, you know, growth mindset, and just like always every opportunity to come in and try something new is an opportunity to grow your path and grow your skills. So I think making sure that you're attuned to that opportunity for growth and learning was really important for me, especially in an industry that was changing every day.
I love it. And I want to circle back to something that you shared a little bit earlier, which is the camp counselor perspective that you can bring to the table. I think oftentimes in these career conversations, we talk about like hard skills that might come to mind immediately when you're thinking about a specific role. But are there any skills that you rely on day to day in your role or in any of your past roles that have surprised you that you need to lean on, or maybe that people might not think about when they're envisioning a career in social media and communications, or any common misconceptions that you'd like to address? Maybe we can,
Sure.
yeah.
I think in any role as you advance in your career, whether you're 22 or 32 or 52, you're going to have to listen to a lot of various perspectives, and a lot of folks will have a lot of opinions about what you do specifically, especially in social, because in social, oftentimes you are the nucleus of a comm structure. You're the first place that somebody goes when they're learning about a company or a brand. And folks internally really want to make sure that their work is being seen outside of the website. And so I think learning to process all of these requests and be able to prioritize those requests and align them with your strategy as the owner of the social channels is incredibly important skill. It's not a hard skill by chance. I think it definitely um, takes some time and learning to figure out what it is. And each organization has kind of different rubric for what that looks like. But I would say having a lot of conviction in your strategy as the person who runs the social and understanding how your work impacts others is really important. And I would say having openness to other perspectives and being very openly communicative with other folks in your organization is really important, to really understand what they need and how you can help them. I hope that is clear.
No,
I'm happy.
yeah, no, that was great. And I've seen a question roll in that we'll circle back to during the Q&A about that strategy and setting measures of success in a social role. I think that that's something that you can probably talk about for a million years. But are there any kind of common misconceptions that you think people have around folks who work in social media or communications that you would want to myth bust or clear up any misconceptions for the audience?
Uh, I love it. So I think a common trope in social is oh, like give the intern who posted this a raise. I think if anybody has seen that comment on a TikTok, like put it in the chat or in the Q&A. Like I think everyone's seen that. And I think, let's be honest, the person who posted that meme for Nutter Butter is not an intern. They're a seasoned strategist and brand creative. So myth busting this trope of the intern has been really important for me in my career. Having conversations like this with folks is important. Social is a science, and um, you know, the question in the chat specific about how do you measure success, and how do you measure your efforts? I measure my efforts every single day. I provide weekly updates for my team on how social posts are performing. I set benchmarks, so like minimum performance numbers that I'm looking for when I post something. So that's how many folks are looking at a post, how many engagements it got, was it shared? Did people save it? Every social post out there is measured in some way and ladders back to the company's goals.
I love that. And I've seen some questions pop in that I'm really excited to get
Yes,
to
thank
during
you
the
all for
Q&A
putting
too.
questions in the chat. I'm very excited.
Yay. Okay. Okay. I want to dial into kind of tips for getting started. I think that that's a
Mhm.
common theme. We have a lot of folks who are early in their careers who are joining us to learn a little bit more about how to potentially break into this same space. Do you have any tips for folks who are looking to gain that entry level experience on corporate social or maybe working as a content creator?
I do. So I think there's two paths forward here. And I want to preface this by saying that working in social does not mean that you have to be a content creator. Not it used to be that you had to wear 500 hats to be successful in social. And now I think that we're getting to a point where companies and especially large brands know that they want to have diverse teams that have really specific skill sets. I happen to have what's called a T-shaped skill set. And that's just because I've had a lot of different jobs. Not everybody is expected in social to have the analytics, the on-screen talent, the copywriting, the design. I think as long as you have a strong team around you, you can be really successful in social as a strategist. I would say when you're starting out in social, when I was first starting to get some social clients, I was doing it on a freelance basis and I was knocking on doors. I was talking to the owner of my local wine shop about their social strategy and how they get the word out about events at the space or classes that they're doing, how they connect with buyers. And that was how I landed one of my first clients, was just by honestly being a customer at the wine shop. I did this for several bakeries and restaurants in my neighborhood as well. So I would say get out there and start to build that network and talk to people about what their needs are and what their goals are. In terms of your question about content creation, if you do feel that content creation is the path that you want to take, start recording videos. Watch TikToks and Reels about what are the best hooks. And a hook is like how you get people to watch your whole video.
Yeah.
What are some ways that you can use CapCut to edit videos? What are some trends that you like that are really interesting? I think there's a ton of information out there on TikTok specific. I don't work at TikTok, but I'm not a I'm
Yeah.
paid by TikTok, but I think it's such a wealth of information. And every day I learn something new, whether it's how to like a new recipe for baking bread, uh,
Mhm.
a new tool on Adobe that they just unveiled at Adobe Max. So just like being really endlessly curious about what's going on and how people are creating content and then trying it yourself, that's really important. And then just posting it.
For sure. And I think kind of circling back to your point about being a student journalist earlier on in your academic career, if you're still on campus, you're still in school, there are so many opportunities for you to kind of build that experience through student organizations, or, there are lots of needs for folks to kind of build a social skill set, right? When you're on campus specifically, and there are lots of opportunities to put yourself out there, I think in a way that's quite unique to being in a college environment.
That's a great point. And I think on campus today, if I were to go back to campus today, there would be such a wealth of opportunities to volunteer to create content.
Yeah.
If you like photography, offer to photograph an event. If you like videography, offer to cover that event. Shoot with your iPhone. If you have a video camera, bring it with you.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there and offering to help it really goes such a long way, and you never know when that'll come back later as an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great way to build your portfolio and your network and your skill set. So love that so much. And you talked a little bit about what you would do if you went back to campus. I want to end before we go into the Q&A with my favorite question for folks who are in different career paths. If you could wave a magic wand and give any new hire or intern that you work with one skill, what would it be and why?
Hmm. Thinking about what would have benefited me the most. But I think today in 2024, um, I would say patience. And you might think that that's a kind of a cop-out answer, but truly, like you're going to post content that's gonna do really well, and you're gonna post some content that is a flop. And that's okay. And I think having the patience and the drive to continue to test and continue to see what works and continue to see what your audience and your community likes is so valuable. And have the patience to keep at it. I think a lot of folks try something, they do it a couple of times and they decide, oh, it's not really working. I want to move on to the next thing. But I think that sticking to it is really going to benefit you in your career later on.
Yeah, I love that. And I think patience is important for any career, but particularly the one that you're in. And I want to navigate into Q&A because we've gotten great questions here.
I believe we're at the Q&A already. That's
Yes, I know it goes fast. I told you. I would love to talk a little bit about how you handle pressure. As you mentioned earlier, you on social, you're often the first exposure that somebody has to a brand, and with that comes a lot of eyeballs, a lot of opinions, a lot of pressure. How do you handle the pressure that you get when you're doing social media?
absolutely. I think early in my career, I was so afraid to quite literally put the phone down. Um, I distinctly remember vacations or dates or like concerts where I would get like an urgent urgent message from somebody at the company, or um, somebody said, "Did you see this comment?" And I would feel that I needed to address it right away. And that's social can be a really high pressure environment, especially early on when you might be the only person running it. I think the way I like to handle pressure is by setting boundaries, clear boundaries, really early on, and making sure you're communicating boundaries for both yourself, for your own mental health, and creating that space for yourself, and also so that folks at work know when they can reach you. If it's really urgent, they know where to find me. But I think now learning when to put the phone down and go for a walk, do something that I enjoy, that brings me joy, is how I handle pressure.
I think that,
Logging off, TLDR.
yeah.
Learn how to log off.
Log off, touch grass. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. My colleague on the back end who is doing our handshake moderation, maybe she can find the link to a previous cool role spotlight that we did with my colleague Miranda, who's a therapist and a marketer who had very
Mhm.
good advice about setting boundaries that maybe would be helpful for folks
Yeah.
as they're thinking through that as well. Okay, I would love to get to this question. I have a lot of experience making posters and social media content for queer nightlife events, but I don't have a large portfolio of sample work for non-nightlife events like fashion, tech, etc. What are your thoughts on making mock examples in the social space?
I think making mocks is a great idea great way to show that you have a breadth of interests and the breadth of understanding of different industries. I do think that making posters and content for nightlife is a great way to show that you know the principles of graphic design and content creation. And that's actually pretty applicable to a lot of different industries. I think probably you'd need to find a way to weave a narrative if you were to go interview at like a B2B company and say, but there's always a way to weave that narrative, and that's part of working in social and communications as well. There's always a way to get to the yes. So you can talk about what that experience of what that experience of working in queer nightlife and creating that content taught you about content creation overall and building a strategy and understanding why you made those choices. And I think all of that is super applicable in different industries. But in terms of other industries or types of businesses that might interest you, I think creating mocks or going out there and creating content on your own time in a volunteer capacity goes a long way. Um, a portfolio can come in many different forms. Mine is a variety of assets that I've created myself. It's copy that I've written. It's collaborations with folks that have gone live. I think there's a lot of ways to showcase the work that you've done.
I think that's great. Okay, I'm trying to distill maybe some themes that
Sure.
a couple of questions are touching on. You mentioned that when you got started in social, you were doing freelance opportunities and contract work. And I think that folks are curious about kind of navigating that space and, making sure that you're advocating for yourself,
Mhm.
negotiating your rates potentially to make sure that you're making money on social.
I think I see the question that you're going to ask,
Yeah.
but I want
Um,
to go
Oops,
ahead.
sorry. So one that I'm seeing is how can I effectively negotiate to earn a livable wage while doing freelance social work? Are there industry standards or the best practices? Do you have any kind of resources that you would direct people to?
I do. In fact, one that went live yesterday. So link in bio,
Wow.
which is you'll see a link to link in bio in the chat.
Mhm.
So link in bio is a newsletter that I highly recommend you subscribe to. It's by Rachel Carton, who used to run social at Bon Appetit magazine. Now she's a social consultant, and she works with a few brands, including Kava, which is the fast casual bowl restaurant. I'm sure many of you have been. Um, is an evolving point of view on how to pay freelancers in social, the value of a social content creator in a full-time capacity. I would say look at her 2024 salary benchmark report that she published yesterday,
Mhm.
and I think you'll get a really good sense of what rates look like today. I would say you're going to have to make a case for yourself. This is, and you might have to take a few jobs that maybe a little bit lower in an hourly rate than you were hoping for or expecting, but I think having those reps and putting those pieces of content in your portfolio is going to go a long way for the next one. And using this as a data point, always lead with data. If you're going to say, please pay me $50 an hour, you can say it's because in 2024, the median rate for freelance social strategist is this.
Yeah.
And this will vary based on where you're located, but I think ultimately having a benchmark, having a basis point for what how to value a role in social is really important. That's a great resource that I recommend.
Love that plug. And maybe you saying always lead with data navigates well into, I'm gonna take some of the themes that I'm seeing across a couple of these questions and pose you kind of one that is comprehensive
Yeah.
of that. But
Thank you for
navigate.
putting it in the chat, by the way. The compensation was in the chat.
Yay. Okay, perfect. So I'm seeing a couple of questions around navigating client expectations or stakeholder expectations, particularly maybe if your aesthetic is different than theirs or if their opinions are different than yours. Do you have any kind of advice for somebody working in a social role or somebody working in a comms role, navigating some of those maybe potentially creative disagreements or strategic disagreements?
I do. I think that matching yourself with a client is a bit like going on dates, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing something that is fruitful for your own career and that you feel proud of the work that you're doing. And I think getting ahead of those conversations means presenting them with a social strategy that you feel is the best fit for their brand. And I think doing that with data by taking the time to go through their current existing social and say, this is what's working and this is what's not based on engagement rate or impressions. You could even say, this post got 100 likes and this post got 20 likes. I think you should do more of the posts that got 100 likes. That's a way to show that you're paying attention to what's working and what's not. Having a sound strategy at the start of that relationship is really important. And you can point back to it and say, this is the strategy that we agreed that we would take together. We're on this journey together, but if you want to make changes, let's talk about why you want to make changes to that strategy or why this doesn't work anymore. And you can usually get to the root of why it is. Maybe someone it could be that someone made a passing comment about one post. You never know until you have a conversation. I think planting your feet and pointing back to the strategy that you agreed upon is really important. And having conviction in the strategy that you built
I
is
love
very
that.
important as well.
A question came in from Abigail that I think is a really interesting one that ties back to you mentioning earlier that not all social people who work in social have to be content creators necessarily. And Abigail is asking, to get started in this field, what do you think is more important at the beginning? Knowing analytics really well or having more of a grasp of the creative stuff like trends and building engaging content on the creative side?
If you're first starting out, I would say if someone is looking for somebody a little bit early in their social career, they're looking for somebody who's really hungry and can create different types of content. I think that's likely what you're going to find.
Mhm.
And you can build the analytics skill set while you're also continuing to build your content creation skill set. There are tons of analytics platforms out there that can do a great job of showing you what's working and what's not working and helping you craft a narrative quantitatively with data. But I think you need to know what best practices are creatively so
Mhm.
that you can link the two.
I love that. Okay, I know we only have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to try and end us on a question that I'm seeing different flavors of as well between majors and potentially career transitions. Do you have any guidance for somebody who's thinking about maybe making a pivot in their career out of something that they were initially anticipating as their path, and maybe they decide they want to pursue something else? You talked about this a little bit in your own background, but do you have any guidance for folks who are considering that journey?
Absolutely. If you feel that you're ready to make a pivot, I think you should do it. I think if you find that you've worked in a field for 1 or 2 years and it's not working and you feel strongly and with conviction that you need to try something new, the only way to figure out if it's the right choice is to do it.
Mhm.
Um, so I really do, with the caveat that you should plan ahead,
Yeah.
um, and make sure that you can pay your rent,
Yes.
especially if you live in New York like me. Um, I would take a leap of faith. I think each leap of faith that I've taken has led me to grow in my career. It's not the case for everybody, but if I think for me, pivoting to something new and building off of the previous experience has been really fruitful for me. Each experience is something that can build up a bit that you can build on for the next one. It's not you're not turning away from it entirely. You're taking it with you in some ways.
That's such a great note for us to end on. Thank you so much, Todd, for taking the time, especially in Black Friday prep season, which I know is crazy right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your energy and your enthusiasm and your advice here. I know we didn't get to answer every question, but I hope we touched on some of the more common themes that we were seeing in the Q&A. For everybody here, if you have 30 seconds to take out our feedback survey in the chat, we'd love to hear what you want to see in future events. And you can make sure to social plug, follow us on Instagram for more event announcements. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Me. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.